The war everyone expected to end in a week. The message arrived with theatrical precision. Every screen on Earth flickered at the same time: televisions, smartphones, billboards, military command displays, even an aging vending machine screen in a Chicago subway station. For 3 seconds, the world went silent. Then the alien appeared. Tall, thin, silver-skinned, four black eyes reflecting cold intelligence. Behind it stretched a massive command bridge full of unfamiliar symbols and glowing panels. Its voice came out perfectly translated in every language. "I am War Executor Zalcor of the Tethari Empire." The alien spoke calmly, like someone announcing a routine administrative decision. "Your planet has been evaluated and found strategically useful. Humanity will surrender immediately. Your governments will disarm, your militaries will stand down, and your resources will be transferred to Imperial administration." The alien paused, studying billions of human faces watching the broadcast. "You have 1 hour." The transmission ended. For several seconds, the entire planet just stared. Then the chaos began. Markets crashed. Governments locked down communications. Military command centers across the world erupted into emergency protocols. News channels repeated the footage endlessly while analysts argued over whether it was a hoax, a psychological operation, or the beginning of the end of civilization. But in a quiet roadside bar outside Houston, Texas, the reaction was different. Jack Callahan leaned back on his stool, staring at the television mounted above the bar. The retired Marine was in his late 50s now. His hair had gone gray at the temples, his shoulders were still broad, and his face carried the permanent calm of someone who had survived things most people never experienced. He took a slow sip of beer. Then he laughed. Not a polite chuckle. A full, wheezing laugh that nearly made him spill his drink. The bartender blinked at him. "You just see that?" the bartender asked. "Yeah," Jack said, still laughing. "I saw it. You think it's real?" Jack wiped his eyes. "Oh, it's real." The bartender frowned. "And you're laughing because—" Jack lifted his bottle. "Because they just made the worst mistake in the history of the universe." Exactly 60 minutes later, the sky above Earth filled with fire. Massive shapes dropped out of orbit, sleek black warships the size of cities. Thousands of smaller vessels poured out behind them like metallic insects. Human radar systems overloaded instantly. Missile defense networks fired automatically. None of it mattered. Blue energy beams sliced through the atmosphere. Entire naval fleets were erased before they could leave harbor. Fighter jets disappeared in flashes of light. Military satellites exploded one after another like fireworks. Within the first 15 minutes, the Tethari Empire destroyed most of Earth's orbital defenses. From space, the planet looked like it was bleeding light. On the flagship Dominion of Silence, Executor Zalcor watched the invasion unfold with calm satisfaction. "Report," he said. A tall officer beside him studied the tactical projection. "Human orbital defense grid neutralized. Ground resistance? Minimal. Their militaries appeared disorganized." Zalcor nodded slowly. Primitive worlds often collapsed quickly once their technological disadvantage became clear. "How long until surrender?" The officer hesitated. "Simulations estimate 5 to 7 planetary rotations." Zalcor folded his arms. "Acceptable." But something unexpected happened on Earth. Humans didn't surrender. They didn't even begin negotiating. Instead, they started improvising. In Poland, engineers converted an industrial electromagnetic crane into a railgun and used it to launch steel rods into orbit. In Brazil, smugglers used jungle supply routes to ambush alien patrols. In South Korea, a team of software developers managed to hack an abandoned Tethari drone and turn it into a surveillance tool. And in the United States, a retired Marine stole a spaceship. It wasn't difficult. During the chaos of the invasion, a damaged alien scout vessel crashed outside an Air Force testing facility in Nevada. The military secured the area within minutes. Scientists arrived. Engineers arrived. Generals arrived. Unfortunately for them, Jack Callahan arrived first. He had friends in strange places. Old favors. Old passwords. By the time the base realized what was happening, Jack had already climbed into the alien cockpit. The control system was incomprehensible. The symbols meant nothing. But one glowing lever looked suspiciously like a throttle. Jack grinned. Well, he muttered, let's see what happens. The ship lifted off. Base security screamed over the radio. Unidentified craft departing restricted airspace. Jack tilted the control stick. The alien vessel shot into the sky like a bullet. Okay, he said, gripping the seat. That works. Back on the Tethari flagship, alarms suddenly sounded. A junior officer looked up in confusion. Executor, we have an unidentified vessel approaching. Zalcor frowned. From where? Earth. That is impossible. Their ships cannot reach our altitude. The officer zoomed the sensor display. A tiny craft, barely the size of a cargo shuttle, was flying straight toward the Imperial flagship. Alone. No weapons detected, the officer said. Shields? None. Zalcor narrowed his eyes. Open communications. The main screen flickered. Jack Callahan appeared, leaning casually in the alien pilot's seat. He held a metal flask. Hey there, he said. The alien bridge went silent. Zalcor stepped forward. You approached the flagship of the Tethari Empire. Yeah, Jack replied. You are alone. Unarmed. And completely vulnerable. Jack took a sip from the flask. Technically. Zalcor tilted his head. Explain. Jack shrugged. Look, Squid, can I call you Squid? You cannot. All right, Squid. Several alien officers shifted uncomfortably. Jack continued. You guys showed up, blew up some stuff, made a big scary speech. Yes. And now you think we're gonna surrender? That is the logical outcome. Jack laughed again. That's adorable. Zalcor's voice hardened. You misunderstand the situation. No, Jack said quietly. You misunderstand humans. He leaned closer to the camera. You think you're fighting a planet. Zalcor's 4 eyes narrowed. You are. Jack shook his head. No. He smiled. You just declared war on a species. Zalcor signaled the weapons officer. Destroy the vessel. Energy cannons powered up. But before they fired, Jack flipped a small switch on the alien console. Good meeting you, Squid. What did you? The ship exploded. But not outward. Inward. For a split second, space folded like paper. Gravity collapsed into a microscopic singularity. Then the shockwave detonated. The Tethari flagship's shields shattered instantly. 2 escort cruisers were torn apart by tidal forces. Deck plates buckled across the command bridge. Officers were thrown against walls as alarms screamed. Zalcor stared at the sensor data in disbelief. What weapon was that? The tactical officer's voice trembled. We don't know. On Earth, deep beneath a mountain bunker, a group of human scientists watched the data stream in. Dr. Mira Patel leaned back in her chair. Well, she said. That worked. A general beside her nodded slowly. Was that the only prototype? Mira smiled faintly. Oh no. She pulled up another screen. A list of classified projects appeared. Gravity weapons. Experimental AI fleets. Planetary defense systems the public had never heard of. Humanity had spent decades quietly preparing for a war no one believed would ever happen. Now the war had arrived. Up in orbit, the damaged Tethari flagship drifted slightly as emergency systems activated. Zalcor looked out the viewport toward Earth. The blue planet glowed below. Burning cities marked the scars of the invasion. But something else caught his attention. New objects were launching from the surface. Hundreds of them. Improvised spacecraft. Civilian transports. Military prototypes. Things that looked barely capable of flight. All heading toward orbit. all heading toward his fleet. An officer whispered in disbelief. Executor, the humans are counterattacking. Zalcor watched the swarm rise toward them. His voice was very quiet. Impossible. But down on Earth, people everywhere were doing the same thing. Building. Launching. Fighting. Not because they believed they would win, but because surrender had never been part of the plan. And somewhere in the vacuum of space, drifting wreckage from Jack Callahan's stolen ship continued spinning slowly. The first human strike of the war. A reckless gamble. A suicide attack. And a message. Humanity wasn't afraid. And the war everyone expected to end in a week had just begun. The war humans were built for. The Tethari Empire had fought hundreds of wars. They had conquered star systems, crushed rebellions, and erased entire civilizations that dared resist imperial expansion. Their strategy was simple: overwhelming power, absolute intimidation, rapid surrender. It had worked every time. Until Earth. 3 days after the invasion began, the war had already stopped making sense. Executor Zalcor stood on the bridge of the Dominion of Silence, watching the tactical projection hovering above the command platform. The holographic display should have been simple. Earth in the center. Imperial fleets surrounding it. Victory within reach. Instead, the map looked like chaos. Red markers, destroyed Tethari ships, were appearing faster than analysts could explain them. Report, Zalcor said quietly. A nervous tactical officer stepped forward. Executor, we have lost 14 destroyers, 6 cruisers, and 3 orbital platforms in the last 8 hours. Zalcor turned slowly. From direct combat? No. The officer hesitated. Most losses were accidents. The word hung in the air like an insult. Define accidents, Zalcor said. The officer swallowed. 1 cruiser collided with an asteroid that had been redirected. Redirected? Yes. By what? Humans. The asteroid had originally been part of a mining operation in the belt between Mars and Jupiter. It was supposed to be harmless, slow-moving rock drifting through empty space. Then a group of civilian engineers from a private mining company did something creative. They strapped fusion thrusters onto the asteroid. Then they aimed it. The resulting impact hit the Tethari cruiser at nearly 20 kilometers per second. The alien ship never even had time to raise shields. That wasn't the only strange tactic humans were using. Some attacks were brilliant. Others were completely insane. Both were equally effective. In the Pacific Ocean, a damaged alien dropship attempted to land near Hawaii. It was met by a swarm of civilian fishing boats. The Tethari commander aboard the vessel watched the approaching vessels with confusion. They are attacking us with fishing equipment? His officer checked the sensors. Negative. They are attaching devices to the hull. Explosives? The officer paused. Fireworks. Moments later, hundreds of fireworks detonated simultaneously around the ship's sensor arrays. The explosions weren't powerful enough to damage the hull, but the bright flashes blinded the dropship's optical systems. Seconds later, 3 human fighter jets, flying without radar detection, launched torpedoes directly into the now blind vessel. The alien craft fell into the ocean. Zalcor studied the reports with growing frustration. These tactics lack discipline. Yes, Executor. They lack logic. Yes, Executor. He looked back at the tactical display. Then why are they working? No one answered. On Earth, deep inside a reinforced command bunker beneath Colorado, the Human War Council was holding its 3rd emergency meeting of the day. Maps covered every wall. Screens displayed orbital combat footage. Dozens of exhausted military officers sat around a steel table while scientists and engineers argued loudly in the background. At the far end of the room sat Dr. Mira Patel. She was staring at the data from Jack Callahan's singularity detonation. General Alvarez leaned beside her. How many more of those can we build? Mira rubbed her eyes. Right now? Maybe 3. And after that? After that we start improvising. The general sighed. Humanity's greatest military strategy. Before Mira could respond, the bunker door opened. A soldier stepped inside. General, we have a prisoner. The room went silent. The captured alien was taller than any human in the bunker. Its silver skin was scorched from battle, and one of its 4 eyes had been damaged during the crash that brought it to Earth. Despite its injuries, the alien still stood proudly. You will regret capturing me, it hissed. General Alvarez leaned back in his chair. Probably. He gestured to the empty seat across from him. Sit. The alien refused. I am an officer of the Tethari Empire. Jack Callahan's voice came from the back of the room. Congratulations. Everyone turned. Jack stepped forward slowly, still wearing the same worn leather jacket he'd had when the war started. He held the same metal flask. The alien studied him. You are the one who attacked the flagship. Jack nodded. Guilty. You died. Technically. The alien frowned. What does that mean? Jack shrugged. Turns out the explosion launched part of my escape pod halfway across orbit. He took a sip from the flask. Got picked up by a cargo drone. The alien stared at him. You are very difficult to kill. Jack smiled slightly. Yeah, we get that a lot. The interrogation began. At first the alien remained defiant. You cannot win this war, it said repeatedly. The Tethari Empire commands thousands of fleets. Jack leaned against the wall. How many? The alien hesitated. 5,000 ships are already en route to this system. The room went quiet. General Alvarez exchanged a glance with Mira. 5,000, the general repeated. Yes. They will arrive within 2 weeks. Jack sighed. Well, that's inconvenient. The alien smiled coldly. You will surrender long before they arrive. Jack pushed himself off the wall. Actually, he said casually, that's the part you're wrong about. The alien tilted its head. Explain. General Alvarez activated a holographic display in the center of the table. The alien looked at it. Then looked again. Its expression changed. The map wasn't showing Earth. It was showing Tethari territory. Several Imperial colonies were marked with blinking red indicators. What is this? The alien asked. Jack took another drink. That, he said, is our insurance policy. 2 weeks before the invasion began, humanity had quietly launched 6 stealth ships beyond the edge of the solar system. They had slipped past the alien fleet during first contact. The ships were small, unremarkable, hard to detect. But they carried something extremely dangerous. Human creativity. And human revenge. The first Tethari colony fell 4 days later. A mining world near the edge of Imperial space. The defense grid shut down suddenly after a mysterious computer failure. Minutes later, orbital reactors exploded one by one. A single human message appeared across the colony's emergency network. You should have stayed home. Back in the bunker, the captured aliens stared at the holographic map with growing horror. You attacked Imperial space. Jack nodded. Yep. You cannot do that. Jack raised an eyebrow. Looks like we just did. The alien's voice trembled slightly. You will provoke the full wrath of the Empire. Jack leaned forward. Buddy. His voice dropped to a low, dangerous tone. You already did that. Up in orbit, Executor Zalcor received the first distress signal from the burning colony. He watched the transmission replay in silence. Human ships moving through the system. Sabotage. Explosions. Chaos. The officer beside him whispered. Executor, humans are attacking our territory. Zalcor felt something unfamiliar stir inside his chest. It wasn't anger. It wasn't fear. It was realization. They had made a terrible mistake. The Empire thought they were invading a primitive species. But humans weren't behaving like prey. They were behaving like predators. And predators always hunted back. When the Empire learned fear. By the second week of the war, the Tethari Empire stopped asking how humans were fighting back. They started asking a more troubling question. How far would humans go? Executor Zalcor stood silently on the command bridge of the Dominion of Silence, staring at a new tactical projection. At first glance, it looked like a disease spreading across Imperial territory. Red markers blinked across several systems. Each one represented a disaster. A refinery destroyed. A military depot sabotaged. A communications hub gone dark. And every report contained the same terrifying detail. Human involvement confirmed. Zalcor clenched his hands behind his back. How many ships are responsible for these attacks? The navigation officer glanced nervously at the data. Executor, the same 6 vessels we tracked earlier. 6 ships? Zalcor repeated slowly. Yes. And they have destroyed 3 colonies. Yes. Zalcor stared at the map. Explain. The officer hesitated. They are not engaging in conventional warfare. Then what are they doing? The officer exhaled. They are improvising. The most infamous attack happened on the Tethari colony world of Varkesh. Varkesh was a mining planet, rich in rare metals used for Imperial warship construction. It was heavily defended, with orbital cannons and automated patrol fleets. On paper, it was impossible for 6 small human ships to threaten it. Yet one ship did. The human vessel was a battered cargo hauler called the Rust Bucket. Its captain, Elena Varga, had once been a smuggler. Now she was technically a privateer working for Earth. Her ship drifted toward Varkesh disguised as a damaged freighter broadcasting distress signals. Inside the cockpit, warning lights blinked everywhere. The mechanic leaned over the control console. Captain, the reactor is overheating. Elena didn't look concerned. Good. The coolant system is failing. Also good. And the engine containment field is collapsing. Elena smiled. Perfect. The mechanic blinked. You do realize this ship is about to explode? Exactly. He stared at her. You're insane. Elena shrugged. Humans invented insanity as a strategy. The Rust Bucket reached the outer perimeter of Varkesh's orbital refinery. Tethari patrol ships approached cautiously. Unidentified vessel. One alien officer transmitted. Power down your engines and prepare for inspection. Elena opened a communication channel. Her face appeared on the alien display. She waved. Hey there. The alien officer frowned. You are entering restricted space. Yeah, Elena said. Sorry about that. Power down immediately. Can't. Why not? Elena leaned closer to the camera. Because my reactor is about to go critical. The alien officer's eyes widened. What? Elena gave a cheerful grin. Nice meeting you. Then she rammed the refinery. The explosion was visible from the surface of the planet. The overloaded fusion reactor detonated inside the structure, igniting thousands of tons of volatile fuel stored in the refinery's tanks. The chain reaction shattered the orbital platform. Debris rained down across the planet's industrial cities. Factories burned. Defense cannons went offline. Mining operations collapsed overnight. And the Rust Bucket somehow survived. Elena had launched an escape pod 3 seconds before impact. Back in the Sol system, the war around Earth had reached a brutal stalemate. Human forces had retaken several orbital sectors. Alien patrols were being ambushed daily. The Tethari fleet still controlled much of space, but the cost was growing. Human tactics were unpredictable. One day they used cutting-edge physics weapons. The next day they attacked with homemade explosives strapped to delivery drones. Executor Zalcor studied the latest battle report with quiet anger. Another destroyer lost, the officer reported. How? A civilian mining vessel dropped several tungsten rods from orbit. Zalcor closed his eyes briefly. Primitive. Yes, Executor. Effective? The officer nodded reluctantly. Yes. Down on Earth, the War Council bunker beneath Colorado was buzzing with activity. Maps and tactical simulations filled the screens. Human ships were launching constantly, some military, many not. cargo vessels, construction craft, experimental prototypes. Anything capable of reaching orbit was being armed and deployed. Dr. Mira Patel leaned over a data console reviewing the latest weapon test results. Jack Callahan walked into the room. He looked tired, but the same metal flask was still in his hand. "Morning," he said. Mira didn't look up. "It's 3 in the afternoon." "Close enough." He studied the screen beside her. "That one of yours?" "Yes." "What does it do?" She sighed. "In theory, it bends gravity enough to rip a ship in half." "In theory?" "It also might collapse a small moon." Jack whistled softly. "Let's save that for emergencies." Mira turned to him. "You realize we're losing ships faster than we can build them?" Jack nodded. "Yeah. And the Tethari reinforcements arrive in 3 days." "Yep. And they're bringing 5,000 warships." Jack took a sip from the flask. "That's a lot of ships." Mira stared at him. "You seem unusually calm about that." Jack smiled faintly. "Well, that's because I've got a surprise." 3 days later, the Tethari reinforcements arrived. The largest armada in Imperial history dropped out of hyperspace near the edge of the solar system. 5,000 warships. Battle cruisers, destroyers, carriers, an entire armada large enough to conquer a civilization in hours. Executor Zalcor watched them arrive with quiet satisfaction. At last, the war would end. "Signal the fleet to prepare the final assault," he ordered. Before the command could be transmitted, a communication request appeared on the main screen. "Human origin." Zalcor frowned. "Open it." Jack Callahan appeared again. Same leather jacket. Same flask. Same annoying smile. "Hey, Squid," Jack said. Zalcor's eyes narrowed. "You face annihilation." "Yeah," Jack said. "About that." "What do you want?" Jack leaned back in his chair. "Just wanted to say thanks." "For what?" "For bringing all your ships in one place." Zalcor frowned. "What are you talking about?" Jack glanced off screen. Then he looked back at the camera. "Hey," he said. "Check your rear sensors." The tactical officer turned toward the sensor console. Then froze. "Executor." Zalcor stepped forward. "What is it?" The officer pointed to the display. The stars behind the Imperial fleet were changing. Space was rippling. Hundreds of hyperspace signatures were appearing. Then thousands. Ships poured into the system from every direction. Not just from Earth. From deep space. From distant sectors. From places the Empire had never expected resistance. The officer's voice shook. "Executor, those ships are not human." Zalcor stared at the expanding armada surrounding them. "Then whose are they?" The answer came over open communications. A new alien voice spoke. "Humans helped us rebuild our colony after a supernova." Another voice followed. "They saved our trade routes from pirates." Then another. "They protected our world when no one else would." Dozens of species. Hundreds of ships. Every civilization humanity had ever helped was arriving. And they were all here for one reason: to return the favor. Jack raised his flask in a quiet toast. "Told you something," he said calmly. Zalcor glared at the screen. "What?" Jack smiled. "You didn't declare war on Earth." He gestured toward the enormous armada forming around the Imperial fleet. "You declared war on humans. And humanity had friends. The war they thought humans couldn't win. For the first time in the history of the Tethari Empire, an Imperial fleet was surrounded. Executor Zalcor stood frozen on the bridge of the Dominion of Silence, staring at the tactical projection as it expanded again and again. New hyperspace signatures kept appearing. Hundreds. Then thousands. The sensor officer's voice shook. "Executor, additional vessels emerging." Zalcor stepped closer to the display. "These ships are not military designs." "No, Executor." "Then what are they?" The officer zoomed the sensor image. "Freighters. mining barges, long-range cargo transports, private exploration craft. A few legitimate warships scattered among them. But most looked like the kind of vessels that hauled ore, grain, machinery, and trade goods between distant systems. Zalcor felt something cold settle in his chest. "This is not a fleet," he whispered. The officer swallowed. "No, Executor. It's a gathering." The first transmission came from a reptilian alien with scarred scales and bright yellow eyes. "This is Captain Ress of the Carthan Free Guild." Behind the alien captain floated a line of brutal-looking warships with jagged hull plating and oversized weapons. "Humans once helped us rebuild our orbital docks after a solar storm," Ress said with a toothy grin. "So we came to help them rebuild yours." The transmission ended. Another appeared instantly. A towering insectoid commander leaned toward the camera, its chitin armor reflecting the light of its ship's bridge. "We are the Resh Collective," it clicked. 27 cycles ago, human traders saved our colony from starvation." Hundreds of sleek vessels moved behind it like a swarm. "Debts must be repaid." The channel switched again. A calm voice spoke this time. A pale amphibian species from a distant trade confederacy. "Humans once defended our system from pirates. We honor alliances." Then the transmissions multiplied. Merchant guilds. Frontier militias. Exploration groups. Mercenary fleets. Every species humanity had helped, even accidentally, had answered the call. Not because they were commanded to. Because they chose to. On the human command cruiser Resolute, Jack Callahan leaned against the railing, watching the armada form around the trapped Imperial fleet. Mira Patel stood beside him. Her eyes were wide. "You didn't tell anyone this was happening." Jack shrugged. "That's because it wasn't guaranteed." "What do you mean?" Jack lifted the flask. "Humans have a habit of helping people." Mira nodded slowly. "Yes. We never really know when those favors come back." She looked back at the armada. "Well," she said quietly, "looks like today." Executor Zalcor studied the overwhelming force now surrounding his fleet. 5,000 Tedhari warships had once seemed unstoppable. Now they looked very small. He turned to the tactical officer. "Estimate enemy numbers." The officer stared at the data. "Unknown. Estimate." "Executor, we are detecting more than 12,000 vessels." Zalcor's breathing slowed. "And still increasing." The first shots came from the Carthan fleet. Their ships accelerated directly toward the Tethari battle line, weapons blazing. Energy beams carved across space. Imperial destroyers returned fire instantly, vaporizing several of the incoming vessels. But the Carthans didn't break formation. They slammed directly into the alien line, their ships designed for brutal close-range combat. Behind them, hundreds of human vessels surged forward. Then thousands more from allied species. The battle exploded into chaos. Human strategy during the war had always been unpredictable. Now it was absolute madness. Mining ships launched drilling torpedoes designed to penetrate planetary crusts. Freighters dumped cargo holds filled with thousands of improvised missiles. One alien merchant vessel literally dropped an entire shipping container full of explosives onto the bridge of a Tethari cruiser. And human warships. They hunted. Small. Fast. Precise. Gravity weapons returned to the battlefield. Tiny flashes of collapsing space tore apart Imperial formations. Entire destroyers folded inward like crushed metal cans. Zalcor watched as his fleet began to collapse piece by piece. "This is impossible," he whispered. On Earth, people watched the war in the night sky. Bright streaks of light crossed the heavens as ships fought above the planet. Children pointed excitedly. Old veterans sat quietly on porches, remembering battles long past. In a quiet bar outside Houston, the bartender stepped outside and looked up. "Think we're winning?" he asked an old man sitting nearby. The old man took a slow drink. "Son," he said calmly, "we already did." Hours passed. The battle turned into a slaughter. Tethari's ships tried to retreat, But hyperspace routes were blocked by the surrounding armada. Imperial formations collapsed under constant pressure. Thousands of ships burned across the solar system. Eventually the order came. Executor Zalcor stared at the tactical display showing the last functioning Imperial squadrons. "Signal the fleet," he said quietly. "Retreat." The officer hesitated. "We are surrounded." "Then signal surrender." Minutes later, a communication request reached the human command ship. Jack Callahan appeared on the screen again. He looked tired. Older. But his eyes still carried that stubborn spark. Zalcor stepped forward on the damaged bridge. "You have defeated us," the alien said slowly. Jack shrugged. "War's messy. You could destroy the remaining fleet." "Probably." "Then why haven't you?" Jack took a sip from the flask. "Because humans aren't here to conquer you." Zalcor's eyes narrowed. "Then why fight?" Jack leaned closer to the camera. "You showed up at our home," he said quietly. "You started burning our cities." He gestured toward the thousands of Allied ships surrounding the Imperial fleet. "So we showed you something." "What?" Jack smiled faintly. "That humans don't stand alone." Silence filled the alien bridge. Finally Zalcor lowered his head. "The Tethari Empire withdraws from your system." Jack nodded. "Smart choice." The surviving Imperial ships jumped to hyperspace minutes later. The war was over. Years later, historians across the galaxy studied the conflict in disbelief. How had a young, chaotic species forced one of the oldest empires in the galaxy to retreat? The answer wasn't technology. It wasn't strategy. It wasn't even numbers. It was something simpler. Humans help people. Sometimes for profit. Sometimes by accident. Sometimes just because it felt right. And when the war came, every one of those people showed up. Back in that same bar outside Houston, Jack Callahan raised his glass. The bartender shook his head. "You know," he said, "those aliens really thought they'd win." Jack chuckled. "Yeah. Why?" Jack took one last drink. "Because they thought humanity was weak." "And?" Jack smiled. "They forgot something." "What?" Jack set the glass down. "Humans don't quit. And we never fight alone."